Hello, guys. Welcome to the LBLB podcast. Today, we are joined by Carli Jo Hobson, who is a badass mom, a business owner, and actually a longtime member of Paragon Training Methods. And so we're super excited to bring on Carli today because we have so many social media followers and Paragon members that are parents. And it can be really freaking hard to juggle eating well, exercising, and just prioritizing yourself and living a healthy lifestyle while mutually raising kids. And obviously, Alex and I are team no kids. So I think that today is going to be super awesome because, again, it's like we can try to give advice about some of these things, but like the best way is to talk to somebody who's actually lived it. And that's definitely you. It's like you've had such a cool journey with Paragon that we've gotten to see, and obviously before that too. So with that, I would love to just pass the mic and say, Carli, tell us about yourself.
Okay, awesome. Well, I'm excited, you guys, to be here. This is so cool. So yeah, my name is Carli Hobson. Carli Jo Hobson. In school, I was always Carli Jo because there was always at least one or two other Carlis like in my class, right? So some people were like, do you go by Carli Jo? Is that like a Southern thing? I'm like, no, it's just kind of, it is what it is. But yeah, my husband and I, we live in Southern Idaho and we have 2 kids and we run a photography and videography business together. And we're working into our 15th season of getting started doing this. Bo didn't initially start out. I started doing photography before we got married. And then I kind of forced him to learn how to shoot video so we could do it together. But yeah, we have 2 kids, 2 boys. They're 8 and 3, and they are as wild as they come, but so fun and so awesome. Yeah, they're getting into some really fun stages right now where we can take them to do all the things like snowboarding and dirt biking. And, my husband's just living his dream with his boys. So it's pretty fun. But yeah, I also do nutrition coaching and a little bit of personal training on the side. I can't keep myself still. So I gotta be doing something all the time. So yeah, I don't know. That's a little bit about me, I guess.
I love that. Why don't you kind of get into your fitness and health story? Because it's like, I think it would be helpful maybe to also, if you don't mind, sharing your age, just so that we can kind of figure out, it's like, for me, I grew up in the era of like all my nutrition advice came from like Pinterest and grocery store magazines. But now present day, like kids are no joke, like, dude, the hell is that? It's like, if it's not on TikTok, if it's not on YouTube, they have no idea. So if you don't mind sharing your age, but then tell us a little bit about, were you an athlete growing up? What was your kind of exposure to nutrition, fitness, healthy lifestyle, growing up as an adult, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, for sure. So I grew up super active. My parents put us involved in pretty much anything under the sun. I danced, I did gymnastics, baseball, did all of the things until I was about in junior high. And then I decided I didn't really want to dance anymore. I'd stopped doing gymnastics at that time. And I really started to get interested in sports. And so from 7th grade until I graduated high school, I played volleyball, basketball, and softball, all 3 sports for my entire high school or, school career. And I loved every single second of it. So I was always super active. But then I graduated, didn't continue on with any sports and just got really lost because all of a sudden I'd gone from, exercising regularly, doing 3-hour practices every single day to all of a sudden not knowing how or what to do for my physical health. And I didn't ever really I wouldn't say I necessarily had a poor relationship with food, but I definitely didn't know how to eat at all. And in fact, when I think back, I'm like, okay, so I would get up and go to school, wouldn't eat breakfast ever. I never ate breakfast. Usually we'd grab some sort of fast food for lunch. Then I'd do a 3-hour practice and then maybe eat something before, staying up till midnight, 1 a.m. doing homework and then, do the whole thing again. So I'm I probably maybe clocked 1,000 calories a day. And I was running, doing all this stuff. So then fast forward to freshman year of college when I'm no longer doing that. And my diet consisted of frozen pizzas and boxes of mac and cheese, right? Freshman 15 for sure happened. So I'm 32. I graduated in 2009. And so from 2009 until about 2018, I just was so lost when it came to my nutrition. And I had such a bad relationship with exercise. It was just one of those things that I'd only ever done it for sports. And I didn't know how to find a passion for it in, the what's the word I'm looking for? Like a hobby type of a way rather than like it needing to be for something. I only ever started exercising if I wanted to lose weight. And then in 2018, I started learning a little bit more about macros, and I had a miscarriage in 2017, and that completely changed my life. Like it was like the spark that finally lit something in me that was like, I can't keep doing what I'm doing. While I know as women, a bunch of people who've gone through miscarriages, we always tell each other like, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. But like deep down, there's a part of me that was like, but if I was healthier, would this have still happened? You know what I mean? Like I asked myself that, even though I would tell myself it wasn't my fault, you have to kind of ask that. And so that was really what flipped the switch to me. That was like, I have to stop only trying to be a healthier version of myself for weight loss. Like this has to be different. And so I started exercising. I started going to the gym and just being like, I don't care if my body changes. I just have to go to the gym. I'm just going to do this regardless of the outcome. Same thing. I started tracking macros. And then ultimately I did like lose weight when I started tracking macros. Like it did just click. And I've talked, I've shared this a little bit in the Paragon group and different things, but I went kind of the other way and got really extreme. And the macro tracking became super disordered. And I like couldn't go out to eat with friends or my husband. If I didn't have my numbers zeroed out every single day, I would like be so stressed out and panicked. I was running like, 10 to 20 miles a week, and not for like training for anything. It was just because I like felt like I needed to just be exercising 6 to 7 days a week. And I lost my period, and it was just like, I'd gone from one end of the spectrum, like clear to the other side. And all of a sudden I felt lost again. And luckily I came across, you LCK, I've told you this many times, but I came across you right at the right time. You had recommended some different hormone books and things. So I started reading them. And that's when I was like, whoa, what I'm doing is actually hurting my body. And so, in short, I got my cycle back, got pregnant, thankfully, again, with our second child. And during that pregnancy is when I just dove into like everything I could learn about more sustainable nutrition, more flexible tracking, ways to still achieve my goals that were less extreme. And then that's kind of where it's led me now.
When did you join Paragon? I think I asked you this when we met in Colorado, but just for the viewers and listeners, do you remember? Like most people are just remember. Like, I joined Paragon, but I don't know. So when did you?
I asked for it for my birthday. That was I was like, this is what I want for my birthday. So I'd had my son in July of 2019. My birthday's October. And so we'd gone on a trip to Oregon for my birthday. And, Bo was like, what do you want? And I was like, I want Paragon. I want Paragon training methods. This is what I want for my birthday. And I guess it's like now an ongoing birthday present forever, but yeah, so it was October 2019.
Gift that keeps on giving.
It does. It keeps on giving forever and ever and ever. And I'm like diehard. I'm like never like with you guys till the end.
I love that. Did you always want kids, and did you always envision yourself, like even from a young age, did you always know like, I'm going to be a mom, I'm going to have kids?
Yeah. I mean, that is something that I definitely always knew that I wanted. I always wanted kids. I always wanted more kids than I have, because then I had kids and was like, oh, maybe I don't want as many children, which, is to each their own. But, my husband and I feel really good about our 2 kids, and we feel really complete in our family. But yeah, there was a time period where I was like, oh, I want like a bunch of kids. And then I had a couple and was like, oh, maybe we're good. So yeah.
Did you see the infographic that was circulating recently? And it was saying something like the average cost of having a child present day from the time of basically like birth up until 18, I think the average that they had calculated was like $300,000 per child.
It's gotta be more than that. Like, there's no way. Like,
yeah.
Yeah, it's got to be more than that. They're not counting something in there.
Right. Well, and it was interesting because the infographic was talking about like why so many people that are kind of actually our age of like right around 30, 35. And it's like the cost of children just continued to escalate. And so a lot of people, it's like, well, I could do that, or I could travel and I could not, like live paycheck to paycheck. So it's fascinating because like I said, it's like that is the number one thing with children that I'm just like Bro, they are so expensive. Like so expensive.
Yeah. I think back to my mom when I was little. Like my mom didn't make very much money, and I'm like, I don't know how you afforded me. And I with parents of my clients of mine, I'm like, how do you afford your children? Like
You figure it out.
Yeah,
it's because it doesn't like it's not like all at once, right? So because we talked about that, we're like, oh my gosh, yeah, kids they're expensive, But then like you have a baby. And maybe it's because like a lot of times you have a shower or something and people like get you set up on the right foot. But because it's just like little things here and there, you don't probably notice it like as much in the time. But yeah, if you sat down and like calculated out like, all the clothes and all the doctors and all the things, like it definitely adds up. But I think because it just kind of like slowly infiltrates into your life, you don't really like notice it all that much. Or I don't know. I don't feel like we've really like, as we sat down and budgeted, we're not just like, man, we really got to get rid of these kids. Like, they're really...
When you had your first kid, your first son, and I mean obviously your second, but like what changed kind of with were you still within like doing fitness stuff or like trying to work on your health, or what was different between the time that you did not have kids versus the time that you started to have kids?
Yeah. So when I had my first son, I didn't do like anything. I think that I found out that I was pregnant and was like, oh my gosh, like now I gotta like, do something. But again, that was back then, right? So my first son was born in 2014. So even back then it was like, if you weren't doing some sort of exercise before you were pregnant, don't you dare start it now. Like, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like that was a lot of the information. And of course it was still the whole like women that are pregnant shouldn't lift over 35 pounds. And so I was just doing like YouTube, like pregnancy prenatal yoga or things like occasionally when I would do it, because I was so terrified because I hadn't been exercising. I can't start now when it's just like, that's just so ridiculous. Like any physical, I mean, obviously you shouldn't be going from like not doing CrossFit, getting pregnant and then like going and trying to CrossFit or something. But
don't get pregnant and then go run a marathon if you haven't been training for a marathon.
Exactly.
Right?
But I could have been doing other things, but there was just so much fear. There's so much more information now for our prenatal, postpartum, pregnant mamas out there, which has just been so huge. I mean, even pelvic floor therapy. I mean, this is a side tangent, but like I had my second baby in 2019. I didn't even know about pelvic floor therapy at all. And now every single mom I know having a baby is like getting into a pelvic floor physical therapist. And I'm like, this is huge. Like this is a game changer that was not even aware. So yeah, so when I had my first son, I had really, really poor habits. And again, like I just didn't really take care of myself. I didn't really exercise. I really struggled with my eating and things like that. And so it wasn't and then after my first son, I got pregnant again a couple years later, had that miscarriage. That's when it was just like, okay, something's got to give. Because I did it all, right? I did Whole30 and I did keto and I did intermittent fasting. And I mean, if it had a name, I tried it, right? Like I did them all, every single one of them under the sun, until finally I was just like, nope, we've got to just scale back and focus on one thing at a time. And that's really just what I did. I just started trying to implement one habit at a time.
Yeah. What was the postpartum like with your firstborn? Like when
my first and my second, night and day difference, absolute night and day difference because of my physical, like where my physical body was. So my first son, I didn't exercise, didn't really eat well. My recovery was really hard, both emotionally and physically. My second son, I wasn't tracking, but I had been tracking macros before. So I had a better idea of more protein. And so I had better health habits, even though I wasn't necessarily tracking during my pregnancy. And night and day difference. I mean, absolutely. I was up and going right after I had it. But the crazy thing is I gained the exact same amount of weight in both pregnancies. So even though I had very different health habits, I exercised during my entire second pregnancy, besides the first 8 weeks or so, because I was dying on a couch. But that's the worst part of pregnancy, is that first trimester when you're just like, there's something inside me trying to kill me. And there's nothing you can do about it. So
sometimes it lasts way beyond the first 12 weeks. It's rough for a lot of women. Yeah.
Yes. I'm blessed that usually right as soon as I get out of my first trimester, I'm just I feel pretty good up until the very last bit. But yeah, some poor women are just feeling terrible for months and months and months.
So you recovered a lot faster with your second pregnancy because you were eating better and then exercising and training.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I, chalk it up to. Obviously, there's always going to be, it depends. There's people that can train and exercise and eat healthy and still have really rough recoveries. I mean, I feel like right now, like so many fitness people in like our industry have like had babies like within the last like 6 months. Like they all decided to get pregnant at the same time, and they're all the people I follow. And so even watching them, you know, every single one of them has had a little bit different like recovery. And even though they're all very much like active, healthy individuals. So it's like, you can't always say like, because I did this, this is what happened. But for me, there was a huge difference. And I do think that it was because of my habits.
Yeah. I think there's something to be said, like if your body is healthy in a great place, like before you have get pregnant and then you have the pregnancy and you're healthy throughout that whole process, your body, a stronger, healthier body is going to be able to recover from something like that, like which is incredibly stressful for the body, much faster.
Oh yeah, it's trauma. I mean, it really is.
Yeah.
Carli, if I may, can I ask how much weight you gained during pregnancy? And then I have a follow-up question once you got that.
I gained 35 pounds in both pregnancies.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my question for you is, younger LCK, like that was something that, aside from, you know, it's like I have multiple reasons why like I'm electing to not have kids in my lifetime. But for me, one of the biggest things that I wouldn't necessarily align with present day, but especially when I was younger and very deep in eating disorder, I had the fear of my body getting bigger and the fear of, well, what if I gain all that weight during pregnancy and then I can't get it off? Or what if like that's just the new me and stuff like that? Did you have any similar sentiments or concerns like that?
Yeah, for me, I don't think I really struggled as much during my pregnancy. Like, sure, it's a little bit harder to like, you know, see the scale going up or like see your body changing. But this is so TMI, but I'm going to share. But like, I don't have a chest. So like when I'm pregnant, it's like, oh, I finally like have some boobs. Like, this is awesome. So it's like, that's kind of nice. And then I just like am kind of proportion weird. So the fact that like my belly is supposed to be like bigger than like the rest of it, it's like, well, this is how it's supposed to be, not just like, you know, how I normally am, because I just feel like I'm so proportioned weird. And so during my pregnancy, I don't feel like I struggled with it as much. Like I kind of liked my growing belly. It was something that I just really embraced. But after is when I struggled both times. Just like, you just look at yourself and you're like, I don't have any idea how I'm possibly going to get this back to like, and not even necessarily back, right? We talk about that all the time, like bouncing back, but you know, get it to a place where I feel confident and comfortable and like I've reached the goals that I want to. And so pregnancy, not so much, but the postpartum period, it was just very, very hard for me mentally and emotionally, like with body image, because things just are different. And you're like, whoa, this is not how it was before. Like with my first son, I thought I had totally skated by without stretch marks on my stomach. I was like, oh my gosh, this is awesome, because I couldn't see them because they were all like under like my belly. And so I was like, you know, constantly like, oh my gosh, okay, I didn't get any stretch marks. And then I had them. And then it was like, oh, they're all clear. Like they're all down here, which is not a big deal. I mean, we get stretch marks, but you know, it was one of those things that I didn't even know that I had them until after he was born. And then it was like, oh, wow, there they are. So I struggled with that.
Was there anything that took you by surprise, either during pregnancy or postpartum, that like you wish somebody would have just like told you or like given you a heads up? Like, was there anything that just like, holy shit, Batman, like what?
Nursing. 100% hands down. It was the hardest thing ever for me. And I don't know if we need to get into like a whole tangent of it, but I just like had this idea in my head that it's like, it's this natural thing that like every woman does. And you just like have your baby and then you just like pop them on. And it's just like, this great thing. And it was not like that at all. In fact, it was like extremely traumatic for me, to the point where when I had my second son, I was like, I don't even want to try. And that can be really hard for a lot of women. There's a lot of opinions when it comes to that. But because my first experience was so traumatizing, trying to like nurse my baby, I just like decided not to I didn't even try with my second. It was just something that I felt very strongly like was not good for my mental health. And I think a healthy mama is the most important thing for your baby. I really do. I mean, there are so many options now that we have. And I was not in a good place with my first son while I was trying to nurse. And it hurt. Like I will take having a baby 10 times over, like the milk coming in, nursing part of it. It was so painful.
Wow.
So painful. for me. So yeah, I wasn't
Totally.
ready for it.
Go ahead, Alex.
Well, I think that's really important for you to share, because I think a lot of moms there's a lot of opinions about nursing, and there's a lot of judgment about people who don't choose to nurse. And I think that's a very good, important thing for people to hear if they have, if they don't want to nurse.
Yeah. Well, and the great thing is that there's options. Like I pumped. So I exclusively pumped, so my babies were still getting breast milk, even though I still think that formula is an option. That's great. And it's necessary for a lot of women. It really is. Like it keeps babies alive. I think that, breast milk is a absolute gift from God, but like also there's like this wonderful other option if that's just something that you can't or is not, or, isn't an option or whatever. And so, yeah, being able to just have these different options now, I just feel like the judgments need to because it's like, again, a healthy mom
I've heard
is
those mom
the best.
Facebook groups are can get pretty toxic.
Yeah, stay out. Don't.
Where do you think that whole opinion and judgment thing comes from? Because I know that, we were talking about a ton of our friends. And so my friend Doc Genfit just recently had her baby. And so I believe with her situation, she was planning to have a natural birth and then ended up having to have a C-section, and just got so much kickback and just again, toxicity. Where does that come from? And why do, where does that come from? Or how did you personally experience this? Cause I feel like every single mom that I've talked to the overarching theme is that it doesn't literally matter what you do, whether you do breastfeed, you don't breastfeed, you have a natural birth, you don't, et cetera, et cetera. It's no matter what you do as a mom, you can't get it right. You're not doing enough. You're not a good mom. Where does that come from? And have you personally experienced that aside from breastfeeding stuff?
I don't know where it comes from, honestly. I wish that I did, because I feel like we could start to make headway to be so much more accepting. But I do think that it kind of can go along with anything in life, right? Like health and fitness and other things. When people live in absolutes, if you have to do this or this will happen, or, just whatever it is. And that's where, again, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier. You can have a really healthy pregnancy as far as lifting weights and exercising, all these things. And you can prepare mentally and emotionally and with a midwife or whatever. And you could still end up with a C-section. You can do all the things. And there comes a point where it's just not in your control. And I think that for so many women, it's just hard because there's people who get really, really strong in their convictions and in their opinions. And you're just
becomes dogma at this.
It just gets so intense to the point where, a lot of women are afraid to even speak up and say, well, this is how I'm doing it, because they might get pitchforks and, things thrown at them. And so I don't really know where it comes from, but I wish I did, because it would help so many of us women just know that we all don't have to parent our kids the same way. We don't have to do things the same way. If we did, life would be so boring. If we all did things the exact same way, you know what I mean? Our little kids would just grow up to be tiny little robots, and that would not be good for the world.
Totally. This is another, a lot of these questions are personal things that I've either thought of or coaching clients over the years, kind of like I said, just had time to think about and marinate. But one of the things I've always found most scary about the idea of raising children is that kids are always watching and they're always paying attention to what we say and also what we don't say. And so was that ever something you had concerns about? Or did you, for me personally, my mom is amazing, but I had a lot of disordered habits or thoughts based off of her own personal things that kind of by osmosis, became my things. So was that ever something you experienced with your own parents? But then is that something that you've been conscious of or made sure to be super mindful of as you've been raising your two kids?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was really lucky. I grew up in a home that there was never really a lot of diet talk or things like that. My mom was just not somebody that ever went on a diet, or I don't remember her talking about that, but she's always been really small and petite. And so I don't think it was just ever something she felt like she needed to do, it was just and I'm the youngest of four. And we were so active. I mean, between me and my older siblings, we were involved in a lot of stuff. I'm from a small town, so we're in a place where like everybody can kind of do everything, or at least that's how it was back then. I think now it's getting a little bit more competitive. But it's like, yeah, I played 3 sports. Like that's kind of not as common anymore because a lot of kids, just kind of pick a sport and stay with it. But anyway, so we were really busy growing up. We ate out a lot because we were just constantly going from one thing to the next to the next. And so when I finally got out on my own, I didn't have a lot of good habits as far as the kitchen went because I just didn't really experience a ton of it. And I wouldn't necessarily blame my parents or anything for that or because again, we were just so busy that most of the time we were hitting drive-thrus or eating at the games, at the concession stands because we were at somebody's ball game every single night of the week. But now that I have my own kids, I have boys. And so while I still think it's super, super important to be mindful of the way that I act around them, I do think that it's a little bit different than the way that I would be if I was raising daughters. But I was just talking about this the other day on my page. I'm kind of working through a cut right now, but I mentioned something. I'm like, my kids don't know. They have literally no idea that I'm doing this because I'm not talking about it. I'm not making comments about my body and what I need to change or any toxic mentality like that. We're eating all the same foods. My portions are just a tiny bit smaller. So really they don't notice anything because I'm doing the same things I've always been doing, at least for the last,
I love that.
3 or 4 years. And, we have a gym in our garage. And so we're always out there exercising. My husband and I want them to see me journaling. I want them to see me reading. I want them to see me exercising. And sometimes I wouldn't say I neglect them, but I make them do something so I can make sure and I have that time for myself because it's really important, especially as parents, that you are taking that time for yourself. And my kids are going to benefit more from seeing me take care of myself than seeing me neglect all of my own passions and habits and health for them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Do they ever ask you about what you're doing? If they see you weighing your food out or, tracking in your phone, do they ever ask, are they ever curious about, what you're doing?
The funny thing is that no, they've never said anything. So I don't know if it's just been so long now that they just haven't, but I've made an effort to make sure that if I am in the kitchen and I'm doing something, I tell them hey, the reason why mom is doing this is because I actually have been feeling really tired lately and I want to make sure that I'm eating enough. So I'm going to be monitoring my food for a little while because it can be really easy for all of us to be complaining about all of these things, right? And I know nowadays, everybody's got a hormone problem. And I'm not saying they don't necessarily because I do think hormone problems are a little bit rampant. But half the time it's but are you eating enough? Are you sleeping enough?
Right.
Tick all those boxes first. And so that's, so I try to be conscious in that effort of the reason why I'm doing this is because I'm trying to be the healthiest version of myself, which means I need to make sure I'm eating enough for fueling all of my, activities and all the things that we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. That's a great way to approach it rather than instill kind of this hatred for yourself. You're doing it out of a place of health. Hey, I want mom's got to be a healthy mom.
Right. Yeah.
Carli, with you and your husband, coaching wise, I always loved kind of seeing the different ways that couples would go. Cause you mentioned that you and your husband do work out. So we definitely, we're on the same boat there. Have you, what does his nutrition look like? And is there anything that drives you crazy? Cause sometimes you'll see a split household where it's one person is doing all the things and the other person will be pizza, beer, fun food. So what does the nutrition side of that look like for your husband? And has that ever been a source of tension or y'all had to have heart to hearts, anything like that?
Oh yeah, for sure. So when we first got married, I would say that he definitely had way better health habits as far as eating and things like that go. I was the one that was he'd always make comments.
YOLO.
Well, okay, here's the thing. This isn't anything towards him because I'd be hey, I'm going on a diet. No sugar, no bread, no whatever. And then of course a week in, I'm sitting there ravaging the pantry and he'd be so I thought that you weren't going to eat that. And I'm screw you, man. Let me live my life, So but he just always, I remember I'd hide. I would literally hide food or soda and things in my fridge and then I'd like open it up and put it in like a cup that like he couldn't see because I didn't want the judgment. And not because he was being judgy, he was trying to be supportive, but he's like, I don't know what to do because you're telling me this, but now you're doing this. And of course it's because my approach was wrong, right? It had like nothing to do with that. My approach was terrible. And I was trying to be like, do things in a way restrictive way. But it's funny because now as the pendulum's kind of shifted, I just cook a lot. I've really, really grown in love with the kitchen, like a ton. I absolutely love to cook. I love to try new recipes. So he's kind of like getting a real, easy pass here because it's just all there for him. And he tells me all the time, he's like, I'm eating like a king these days. Like, we always have just like food in our fridge. So he just eats what, I eat and what, or what our family eats. I feel like there's also so many resources now for really great, like macro-friendly options that are family-friendly as well. There's so many people out there putting out like super great meals.
What are some of your favorite places to get that information?
There's actually a girl that lives just in our hometown and she just launched her own meal subscription service. So that is like really cool. And then, I can't even think of people's names because their Instagram handles are different than their names. But
I love that.
What is it? She's part of like Paragon, right? Eat Gains, something.
Oh, Eat the Gains.
Thank you. Eat the Gains, yes. So like
Yeah.
all like her recipes, there's a girl named like Elise Ellis that does a lot of like macro-friendly like recipes. So, and I'll like just like pull things off of Pinterest or just like make up my own stuff as well. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I would say that now our nutrition's like pretty much the same because I cook and then he just gets to like eat all of it. But he started to kind of like toy around with the idea of maybe tracking. And I'm like, it'd be really easy for you because it's literally already like laid out for you. Like all you'd have to do is just like plug it in to the app. So he doesn't right now, but maybe he'll eventually get to a point where he wants to if he gets like a goal for it. But yeah.
Yeah. So you, from my understanding, everybody in your house eats the same. Like,
well,
you, your husband.
No.
Yeah.
Not necessarily my kids. Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah. So what's that like? I mean, cause I have a client and she asked actually one of these questions and she wanted to know like, do you cook different meals for your kids, for different foods? What do your kids eat like compared to you? Yeah.
So here's where I feel like it has to be said, right? That like every dynamic's going to be different in a family and everybody's, things that they put as a high priority are going to be different, right? Like I, as a parent, might think that like my kids learning to sleep and sleeping in their own rooms is a high priority where somebody else is like, hey, I'm okay if my kids sleep in my bed till they're 5. Like, and that's like everybody's their own, right? For me, I don't get super overly stressed when it comes to food because I just personally feel like I would rather my kids eat than develop food fears or food anxieties, which again, everybody's different. But I do have, my older son has a lot of food anxiety that we just like don't really know where it came from because it's not like it's something that I feel like we necessarily like implemented for him. But he gets really, really, really anxious about trying new foods to the point where he's made himself physically sick when we've done the whole like, you're not leaving the table until you try a bite. And then all of a sudden he's like puking because he's so sick about it. And it's like, as a mom, I can't sit there and like force my child to try a food that they are like, honestly, really, really upset about, So what we typically do is I will make, whatever our meals are. I usually plan out our meals, grocery shop, do everything like, Sunday, Monday. And no matter what, we always have safe foods that everybody loves on the table, right? So it's like, I might have made like a main meal, but there's going to be strawberries or yogurt or other sorts of like side dishes that for sure I know like all of my kids, I have 2, but that my kids all love. And then maybe, I will throw in like some chicken nuggets or something for my kid just to make sure that he's getting enough food. Because I think that there's problems also with your kid not getting enough nutrition, right? So it's like that happy medium that you have to find a balance between like, you're eating what we're eating, but also like, I can't send you to bed hungry because I know like your brain's not developing, like your body's not developing, like all of these things aren't happening when you're not eating enough food. But he's getting way better. Like he's trying new things. We just are slowly encouraging it, but I don't like force it. And then my other child, it just eats whatever. Like he eats everything under the sun. So it's like kids are different. And
garbage disposal.
Yeah, exactly. He is. Like yesterday morning, he asked for chips and queso for breakfast. And I was like, I don't even care.
That's amazing.
Like, whatever.
Best life.
That's kind of how I was when I was little too, man.
I was like, hey, whatever.
So with your oldest, what you said you do is you have some things that maybe y'all are all eating, and then you provide some things that are like options that are like he likes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's always safe foods. No, every meal we have, there's always going to be something that I know that he likes or that we all like. And so then that way it's like, maybe I put the pasta dish that I made on his plate. Hey, I'd love for you to try this, but it's up to you. But here's strawberries, here's yogurt, here's like a string cheese or whatever, it might be. But again, like that's typically just kind of our dinners. When it comes to breakfast, I mean, my older one's in school, so he's eating lunch at school or I'm packing him a lunch. But breakfast, we're all kind of eating different things. And I guess for me, I have a hard time because as adults, we get to pick and choose what we eat. But like a kid, you just have to like eat what is in front of you, no matter what, every single time I give it to you. Like, I feel like there has to be a little bit of choice in there. But again, if I had like 5 or 6 kids, this might be different because there's no way I'd be making 6 different meals, a night. But for the most part, it's not like that for us. And so it hasn't been something that I feel has needed to be such a high stress in our family because I want meal times to be something that we remember just being together, eating foods that we love, not it always being a fight.
I love that. How do you guys handle your pantry and dessert items? Because I feel like this can be common to see people almost like sometimes bribing their kids, so like, let's say you're out grocery shopping and it'll be like, hey, like if you behave, we'll get ice cream after this or something like that. And so with you and your family, do you keep treats and desserts in the house? Is your pantry full of fun, or is it, mostly healthy, super healthy items? Like what does all of that look like for you?
Yeah, for sure. It's actually funny. My father-in-law is always like, because we have a big like walk-in pantry, and he always is just like, this is the Costco pantry. And I'm like, yeah, you bet it is, like for sure. So that is something that, I mean, if I'm being honest, I'm kind of proud of not because, I mean, people could rake you through the coals of having like unhealthy food in your house, but for a long time, like I couldn't, right? Like I struggled so bad with this all or nothing mindset that when I was going on a diet, it all had to go. And if it was in the house, I would be pounding it, right? So now the fact that I can have Oreos and ice cream and Doritos and Fruit Loops or whatever it is, all these things in my house at any given time. I mean, I have like 3 bags of like Reese's, like eggs frozen, like in my freezer right now that I can just like grab one and just eat it and move along my day. And same thing goes.
I mean,
I think that there's like phases my kids will go through where they are a little bit like more gravitating towards like the snacks or the treats and things. But for the most part, I really want them to be able to be in a home where that stuff is just kind of just like there. So when they go to someone else's house or when they go other places, it's not like ravaging. For me growing up, like we didn't have TV. Like we had like bunny ears on our TV. So we'd get like 2 channels. My parents just like, we're never playing for cable. But if I went to a friend's house, oh my gosh, I'd be glued to like the Disney Channel or like whatever it was because we didn't get that. And so it's kind of one of those things where it's like the moderation and all things, right? And so we do try to practice that with our kids and just like, okay, you can have that, but let's also have some fruit. Let's have like some protein, let's build like around like whatever this like treat is. But it's not something that I feel like we try to have like restriction around because I've struggled with it for so long to now be in a place where I can just like be around it. And it just like my husband makes brownies literally like once a week. I don't really like brownies. But even before, I would have been pounding like half a pan because they were just there and they're bad and they're off limits and I shouldn't. And now it's just like, even make your brownies. I don't care. Like, I'm not going to eat them because this doesn't really faze me.
Yeah, because I mean, restriction is typically going to lead to that scarcity mindset. It's like, oh, like can't have this. This is bad food. Got to have it all. I remember I was the same way. We weren't allowed to eat like I don't know, what would you have like certain candies and stuff like that. And I'd go to my friend's house and they'd be like, they'd have all that stuff. And I would just like, yeah, I'm going to eat all of this.
Yeah, for sure.
Man, I had a friend growing up and I like still think about this regularly, but she was one of those, like her mom was just always on a diet. And even at a young age, I remember, being in elementary school and fully understanding that her mom was always dieting, always doing these, super crazy restrictive shakes and all this stuff. But it was so, even as a kid, it was like you felt for her because it would happen. It's like we would have sleepovers. She would go, we would all go over to somebody's house, and she would be the person that, like, if there's chips, if there's candy, just like uncontrollable eating and binging. And like I said, even from a young age, it was just like, oh man, like, yikes. So I love that you shared all of that, because, again, it's like, with parenting, there's just so many opinions and so many ways to do it. And it's like, you kind of have to take what, it's like, well, what do you want it to look like? What have you heard other people do? And then how do you take it, make it your own? And it sounds like you've created a really awesome and really inviting, kind of, scene for your kids to grow up in, which is really, really awesome.
Thanks.
Do you let your kids choose like what kind of foods they want to eat? Like, if you go, do you take your kids like grocery shopping with you, or
not anymore?
You're like, no.
Is that a parenting hack? Kids don't come to the grocery store with you?
Grocery pickup literally changed my life. Like, for the longest time, I didn't really do grocery pickup because I was like, well, I don't know. I had my reasons. And then finally, I was just like, I can sit down, make an order Sunday night, pick up my groceries Monday morning, and it's just done. Because yes, if you do take your kids to the grocery store, they're going to be like, I want this, and I want this, and I want this. And the next thing you know, you're like $200 over your budget for the week of groceries. So I will like ask my kids sometimes, like, is there anything you guys want to eat this week? Or is there anything you want me to get from the store? But like, my kids are still little, 8 and 3. They kind of have opinions, but not really. So they're still at a point where I just kind of do it all. But what you guys were talking about, it's, there are so many opinions about this stuff. And, people might say, well, yeah, but you're creating such unhealthy behaviors in your kid by letting them eat this junk ever. Like, they should never even be eating it, But again, it kind of comes down to that, like, there has to be steps and stages, because I know for me, like, going from one end to the other was just never possible. So now I'm at a place where, I allow myself to just eat anything in moderation, right? And now I've gotten to a point where it's like, but a lot of it I just don't even touch anymore, because I know it's probably not the best for me, maybe every once in a while. But like, so it's kind of just that like stair step that I think you have to allow people to go on that journey. And so all of this like food fear that's on social media right now, like all the people walking around the grocery stores, like telling you everything that's killing you.
Bless.
It's just like, you've got to let people get to that point, because it's not helping. If they're already going from the junk, and then you're trying to get them to cut everything out, and then there's like nothing to eat, they're going to just spiral back, and they're going to be so confused.
It's bouncing.
Yeah, it
bouncing
is.
back between one extreme or the other.
Yes. And most people who do learn a more moderation approach will probably eventually end up gravitating towards like more whole foods, just like in general, because you realize they make you feel better and they fill you up and all of these things. But again, if I hadn't have gone through the steps of like, I can eat cookies and it's okay and it's good, you know what I mean? Like, then I'd never be at a point where I'm just like, the cookie's not worth it to me today, I literally saw, because I love following Food Science Babe, not to be confused with Food Babe, but Food Science Babe just posted a video that she had shared on TikTok yesterday. And literally somebody was shaming Himalayan pink salt. like we're not even talking food anymore. Like, quite literally, TikTok is worried about salt. And I just died inside, because in the video, like, she actually kept her video short and sweet. And it was just like, guys, just like stop with the food shaming and the fear. Like, the food and fear mongering is just tragic. Yeah. But Carli, I wanted to ask, you mentioned y'all love Costco, but where are your guys' favorite places to grocery shop? And then do you happen to know, because you mentioned you do budget, how much money do y'all spend on groceries? Because you're a family of basically 2 and then 2 kids. So what does that look like?
Yeah.
Wait till that oldest hits 14.
I know, right? I'm like waiting. I know.
Just be ready. Save up now.
I'm actually like looking forward to the day. I tell my husband all the time, because he just struggles eating so much. I'm like, one day he's going to be a teenager and he's just going to eat everything. And we can't be mad about it, because this is what we wanted. So again, we live in a small town, so we really don't have access to a lot of things. Like, the grocery stores in our actual town is like Walmart. We have like a Smith's or like a Kroger. And then like, I think we have like a Walgreens that are, we've got a couple like little ones. So yes, we go to Costco. It's about 40 minutes away. So we hit that, every maybe like once a month, once or twice a month. I don't know. It depends on how often we're kind of like going that direction, because we do a lot of work that way as well. But, you know, I mean, our Costco bill can be anywhere from like a couple $100 to like $1,000, depending on what we throw in our cart that day. You know what I mean? Costco will get you.
Black out and
oh my gosh,
even know.
we come home with like a basketball hoop, and it's like, oh yeah.
Why did I buy this?
Yeah. So typically though, like I do all of my produce and just more like fresh stuff from our Smiths, our Kroger. And I typically am spending between like 100 and 120 a week on groceries there. And then I would say like on average, we probably spend anywhere from like maybe $300 to $400 a month at Costco. So we're probably around like, I don't know, $700 to $800 a month on groceries, but we don't eat out like hardly ever. We really cook and eat at home majority of our meals. And so we don't have a big budget that goes towards eating out. Like we really don't eat out a lot at all. We used to a ton, but now that I cook a lot and it's just become something that I'm really passionate about, like we rarely eat out.
Do you love cooking? Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Lauren.
I was actually curious, with your kids on the occasion that you do go out to eat, do you find that they kind of order the same foods that you're normally cooking at home? Or is it the extreme of like, oh my gosh, I'm going out to eat, so I'm going to order mac and cheese and like all this crazy stuff? Like, what do their habits look like if you do go out to eat?
Yeah, well, we're not real fancy. Like when we take our kids out to eat, it's generally Chick-fil-A. Like 99% of the time.
I was hoping you'd say Chili's. Chili's and Applebee's.
Right? I haven't been to a Chili's or an Applebee's in a very long time, actually. No, we're like usually like, okay, Chick-fil-A, because we just know it's not going to be a fight. We know what they like. We don't like get super adventurous.
Macros.
Oh my gosh, heck yeah. Okay. So, I mean, but no, if we go somewhere, I mean, it's kids menu. It's usually like mac and cheese or chicken nuggets. Okay. The one day my younger son wanted like sliders. Like we went to Texas Roadhouse or something, and he decided to get some little like hamburger sliders. And I was like, cool, like I'm down with that, you know? But for the most part, no, it's pretty much like we keep it just the same. We just we're not adventurous.
Yeah. I feel like your youngest is going to be that kid that eats like an adult, like when they are like, that was me. Like I was sitting, my mom like tells me like, yeah, like you were eating like trying to order filet mignon. I'm like, this kid is costing me. Like,
he will for sure be that kid.
Yeah. I would never eat off the kids menu. I hated it. Like I hated all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Or he's going to start like complaining about my cooking. Like I didn't spice it right, or I didn't this or that. Like he will for sure be that kid.
Do you cook every day, or do you do meal prep, or?
Yeah, typically I am cooking like 3 to 4 times a week. It depends on what we're having, but we also we work from home. So we're eating 3 meals a day from home. So something that like I make for dinner might last us like a couple days for lunch. So I might be cooking more dinners during the week, but again, like it's just because we're like shuffling through stuff, and we're only a family of, 4, but even my kids are just like eating not very much. So, it's like, what's today? Wednesday. So it's like I cooked Monday. I cooked 2 meals, like lunch and dinner Monday, and that's fed us lunch and dinner yesterday, and it can feed us lunch and dinner today. So, I mean, I'm really typically only cooking maybe like 3 or 4 times a week, but it just kind of depends on what our schedule and routine is. But I'm usually cooking more. Whatever I'm making more of. If I'm cooking chicken for whatever we're making that night, I'm throwing on like an extra package of chicken and grilling it or whatever, so that we have chicken for salads and tacos and bowls or whatever for at least a couple of days.
Yeah. Do you do a lot of low prep stuff? Like I know you said you stopped in Costco, like stuff already like kind of pre-made. Do you utilize that?
A little bit here and there, not as much. Like I really like to grill. So we grill like a lot of meat, and then I'll just have that, or like we air fry stuff. But I don't do as many of the like pre-cooked options, just because I don't really know. I should utilize them more. We've gotten in a routine of like these same like 6 or 7 meals. And I swear we just like rotate through them so regularly.
I think that's smart.
How does your nutrition stuff look like? Let's say, because y'all do more like wedding photography and stuff like that too, right? So it's like, how do y'all plan for those days that you are just out shooting and you're away from home that day? Like, do you guys take food with you? What does that look like?
Yeah. So our business is really cyclical, right? So it's like right now we're kind of in our slower season. So we're really not traveling and shooting a ton. But like once like April, May hits, from like then until the end of October, I mean, it's just like go, go, go. So which is another reason why I typically try to plan my like nutrition phases better, so that I can be like in maintenance or whatever during the summer, because yes, we are just out and about a lot more. So it kind of depends on what we're doing. Usually like weddings, like we get fed really well. So I'm never really like that concerned, but we might start shooting a wedding at like 10 a.m. and we're not sitting down to eat something until 7 p.m. because we have just been like going nonstop. So we always pack like a ton of snacks, fruit and protein bars and protein shakes, jerky, things like that. I pretty much always, if I'm leaving my house, will have a little bag of some sort of snacks. And then, we might hit out for just like grabbing dinner or something, go get, I don't know, some sort of like teriyaki bowl or some sort of, tacos or something like that. But for the most part, yeah, I will take food every once in a while, depending on where we're going or what we're doing. But usually it's just a lot of snacks. And then we'll usually grab like at least a meal when we're out and about. But some of those long shooting days, we just don't eat. And that can be really hard because all of a sudden you're just like, I haven't eaten. And now here's this like prime rib. And I've got to shovel like 3,000 calories in my face in like 5 minutes because they're about to do the next thing. But our business is starting to transition. So we're actually doing less weddings and more like commercial branding and corporate photography and videography. Cool. So it's our schedule's getting a little bit less long, like super long days, which is really nice.
Mm-hmm. How do you, go ahead, Lauren.
I was gonna say you like saw me start to move.
Yeah.
I love that though. Carli, do you feel like with your friend group, are the fellow, do a lot of your friends also have kids? Do you have a lot of friends that mutually aren't? And then also, do you find yourself, you've kind of surrounded yourself by like-minded individuals, or is it just like totally random? What does your friend circle look like in that regard?
Yeah, for sure. So I feel like I'm kind of the like floater a little bit. Like I just love people and I love all different kinds of people. So I really have a kind of, random, I wouldn't say random, but, different friends that are into very different things. Like I have some of my groups of like girlfriends that don't like exercise at all, really, or they're not really doing anything in way of that. They don't track, they don't, anything. And then I have friends that do, or I've made friends through Instagram. Most of my like health and nutrition friends that I would say that I'm really close with, they don't live like here. So they're more like internet friends that I Marco Polo and, Instagram and chat with them. And so that's been really cool to like really connect on that level. And even some of my like good photography friends in the photography industry, they don't live like here, so they're just like, internet, online friends and things that I see every once in a while. But as far as like my group of friends here, yeah, like everybody's got kids. I mean, the neighborhood that I live in, it's like I can point at this house and it's like they've got 3, they've got 6, they've got 5, they've got 4, they've got, whatever, just like right here that surrounds us. And so, more like you become friends based off of like area and location, right? So it's like you have your friends that are here because you go to church with them or your kids go to school. And then it's fun for me to find those people. That's why the internet can be so awesome because I'm able to find those people and connect in deeper ways than maybe I haven't been able to connect with people who like live in my neighborhood or that like are like right around the corner. Not saying that I don't have that, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. I would love, because I personally know that you have thyroid issues, but that was actually, we haven't talked about that at all. So I was curious because we were kind of texting back and forth the other day and you were asking some questions, which like I said, like text me, I always love to help. But when did you first find out that you had thyroid issues? Like, was that something you discovered during pregnancy? Is that something, you've been dealing with a while or?
Yeah. So actually I had gotten back from basketball camp. It was the summer before my senior year of high school. And my mom picked me up. We went to lunch and we were sitting there eating and she was like, swallow. And I was like, okay. So I swallowed. She was like, swallow again. And so I was like, okay. So I'm like sitting there eating my food, swallowing while she's like, just like looking at me so weird. And I'm like, what are you doing, Mom? Anyways, I had a big like cyst on my thyroid that I just like didn't know about. And now like looking back, it's like, oh my gosh, like you're in high school, right? So it's like, I already told you, like I was eating like 1,000 calories. I was running, I had a job. Like the second I could get a job, the day I turned like 15, I walked in and got a job. So it's like, I'd go to school, I'd go to practice, I'd go to work if I didn't have a game, and then I would go home, So it's like, I'd be rolling in at like midnight so many nights. And so I'm tired. My hair was falling out. Like all these things were happening, but I used to bleach my hair. So it was like the things that were associated with thyroid problems, I just like we chalked up to like, being a 17-year-old.
Being a teenager.
Exactly. Yeah. And bleaching my hair and living in tanning beds and things like that, right? Oh, the late 2000s. It was a great time.
The best time.
Oh my gosh, it was. Anyways, so we went in and my mom actually worked for an ENT at the time. And so she was a little bit more like understanding of kind of what to look out for. And so we went in and of course they found this like cyst on my thyroid. They put me on like a medication or like an antibiotic. I can't remember what it was exactly to try to see if it would like go away. And that was like a couple weeks and then no change. So then they just like stuck a big needle in it and like had to drain it and like it like filled back up or whatever. Anyway, so long story short, they ended up going in and deciding that they needed to remove it. Luckily, like it wasn't cancerous or anything. But when they went in, the cyst was like too big or was just like over or encompassing half of my thyroid so much that they had to remove half of my thyroid. So I only have half. So that is like kind of where all of my stuff started stemming from was the fact that now I just like, I don't have a full one. I only have half. But they just like gave me medication and sent me on my way. And I didn't see anyone about my thyroid for probably 6 years. I mean, I didn't get blood work done, nothing. I just like got my pills, my prescription filled and just went on my merry way. And it wasn't until I got pregnant with my first son that they finally were like, well, we're going to monitor your thyroid a little bit more and whatever. But I mean, it wasn't really until I started following you and started reading a little bit more that I'm like, oh, this is something I should really be paying more attention to. Like, this is a big deal that no one ever made me understand.
Goodness. That's crazy how much your story is similar to my story then. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
What medication did they put you on? And is that still the same medication you take present day?
Yeah. So I'm on levothyroxine and I've been on that since, I'm just on a different dosage now. Since we texted, luckily I got some those other labs pulled that we were telling about and things are looking real good. So now that I've got that other information, I'm like, okay, so now we have the full picture. This is why my symptoms and things are actually matching up, even though we thought that anyways, it's just, you guys. Yeah, that's a whole nother thing.
With thyroid stuff, what are the symptoms you personally, because it's like for me, whenever I have certain symptoms, I'm like, time to check my lab work, even though I've just kind of gotten in the habit of I tend to check mine every 2 to 3 months because I would rather always be on the preventative side of things and like see stuff before it's starting to go downhill. And that's always where I try to encourage people. But what symptoms do you personally tend to see with your thyroid stuff?
Yeah. For the most part, it's the fatigue. Like I just feel like I just get so tired to the point where, and I'm like a morning person. I'm usually go. Like I don't really drink a lot of caffeine, like much at all. I've just always kind of been like a really busy person. And so when I start to just like notice that I'm like really dragging, or mine's like the brain fog, it's like I cannot think straight. Like, why can't I make a decision in my life? Why can't I think straight? Why can't I like articulate my thoughts? That is when I think for me, I start to notice. And then my body, like my weight will just like, I feel like that is like when I first know too, is all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, I've gained like 5 pounds in 2 weeks. I'm tracking my food regularly or whatever, and there's like not other reasons for it. For the most part, the last, like 4 or so years, because I would like, do like Paloma Health or something like that. And I'd kind of been monitoring it more regularly. But like this last, like end of October, November, I just like, I woke up one day with like a headache and it didn't go away for like 3 straight weeks. And I like gained like 6 pounds in like a month. I was like tracking, like so many things were like just felt off. And when I went into the doctor, I was like, look, I promise I'm not just one of those people that is going to come in here and tell you like, I feel like I have a hormone or a thyroid problem. Like I can give you a year's worth of my food logs. I can give you a year's worth of my daily weigh-ins. I can give you a year's worth of my steps, my water. Like, I'm like, I have all the data. So I'm ticking the boxes, something's off, you know what I mean? And so we did like a whole like blood panel comprehensive and stuff. And my progesterone came back a little bit wonky. And then like my thyroid was just like a little bit off. And that's when we started playing around with my new dosages and stuff. And now I'm feeling really good. Like, it's like, okay, the scales like shifted back down. Like, I feel like I've got clarity, energy. Like I feel really, really good right now, which is why I was texting you the other day. Cause I'm like, I feel like my labs and my body are on the same page, but like maybe that's okay. And that's when you were like, no, that's okay. That can be that way as long as these things are. And I'm like, okay, that's what I thought, or whatever. I'm good. So yeah.
Yeah, no, that's, there's so many good nuggets there. For those that aren't familiar, when we're dealing with thyroid issues, that's your thyroid gland is basically this butterfly-shaped gland in your neck. And so it deals with everything from your metabolism, your sleep. If your thyroid is off, it's also going to affect your menstrual cycle. It's going to affect your mood, your sex hormones, all of that stuff. And so common symptoms that maybe something's going on with your thyroid are going to be like Carli suggested of, extreme fatigue or exhaustion. It would be this brain fog and just not being able to think clearly. You can have really cold fingertips or toes, or just you're always freezing. Maybe you're that person that you're always having to wear a hoodie. You're always just, very, very cold by nature. It can also show up in your digestion. So you can have really slow or delayed digestion. Like maybe you're somebody that you only go to the bathroom every 2, 3, 4 days rather than daily. And it can also manifest in like dry hair, dry skin, like fingernails, like maybe your fingernails or your hair don't grow really fast or really long. And then also, like Carli said, with weight stuff, it's like, why am I suddenly gaining weight? Or maybe you go to diet and you drop your calories and nothing's happening. That's always when you want to check in and basically see, hey, how's my thyroid? What's going on there? And so what Carli and I were texting back and forth on is she doesn't have access like maybe I do, here when I lived in Texas or now California, it's like I can go 5 minutes away and I can pull labs. I can go to a Quest Diagnostics, a LabCorp, and she doesn't have that in her hometown. And so we were kind of, going back and forth on like, well, how can I get updated labs? Because even still, we drew some labs, but some of them, they like ordered ones that, like I said, I was like, I hope you didn't have to pay for this because the XYZ is a waste of your money. So basically, couple different things, but you would want to check your TSH, your free T3, your free T4, and then your TPO and TGAB would be your thyroid antibodies. So those are the 5 things that you want to check. But if you are in the same predicament as Carli, where you're like, I don't have access to good doctors, I don't have access to those things. It's like, know that especially after the pandemic, telemedicine is huge. That's actually still, my doctor is still in Austin. And we just have a phone call, every 3 or 4 months, we'll Zoom, talk about things. I'll go draw labs and, on with her day. But in her case, she still doesn't even have access to a Quest or a LabCorp, which are kind of like 2 popular places you can go and pull labs. And so she referenced one company earlier, which was Paloma Health. And then there's also Everly Well. And so basically they're just these mail order kits that they're going to ship to your house. And I always give the disclaimer, they're a pain in the ass because basically you will have to prick your finger and then you have to squeeze it. And I don't remember how many dots, but let's say there's
4 or 5, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say they're huge, but like you have to squeeze the blood off of your finger onto these dots. But once you do that, basically you can, let it dry, get it back in the mail. And then usually you'll get the results back within a few weeks. But that's a great option for those people that's just like either hey, I don't have time to like find a doctor, get in, but you can self-check that, which is really, really good. The last thing I wanted to kind of comment on was, you had mentioned, well, I'm feeling really good, but I don't know, do my symptoms or my lack of symptoms match up with my lab work? And I think the biggest thing to just understand there is that most good doctors care more about how you feel than what those numbers might say. So yeah, we might have general guidelines of like, hey, we want to see people here for XYZ level. But at the end of the day, how you feel also kind of rules all, because it's like, well, if those levels are sitting pretty perfect and where we typically like them for most people, but we're still having problems or we're still having certain symptoms, well, then we need to go deeper and we need to check sex hormones or other things, digestion, stuff like that. But then reversely, it's like, everybody's going to have different everybody's different. And so every person, it's like there's no textbook that's going to say, hey, but mutually the biggest thing you see with thyroid issues is that we sometimes go off of old and outdated reference ranges rather than a good doctor might have, certain optimal ranges and stuff like that. So just know like it can be a jungle out there, but telemedicine is an option. And again, it's like you can try Googling thyroid special in city, state where you live, see if you can connect with somebody. And if not, it's like, that's where a good reference is always just to go to your friends, because, if you have somebody like me, I'm like, hey, this is who I go for my hair. This is who I go, it's like people are always happy to share good references when they have them. But, we can link up some of this stuff in the show notes too, because again, it's just like not everybody has access to that in-person care. But I love that, it's like you have me and you were able to reach out and stuff like that.
So helpful.
Alex, you got any questions?
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask a few questions actually. Aside when you have your thyroid being managed, I know kids take a lot of energy. Do you struggle with energy throughout the day, like at all, like with just keeping up with your kids?
So not so much now. And again, this is like kind of something that we talked about before, it's like everybody thinks they have a hormone problem, which I'm not saying that people don't, but it's like, if you're not doing a bunch of other things in order to like help give yourself more energy and to help yourself feel the best, then like maybe it's not time to go get the blood work done until we're, like you said many, many times, like, are we sleeping 7 to 9 hours a night? Are we exercise? Are we drinking water? Are we getting whole food? Tick all those boxes. And then if you are and you still feel like trash, then like maybe we need to go a different route. So I would say that before, like in my early parenting stages, yes, I feel like I would get that mid-afternoon crash, just really had like a hard time, managing. I mean, when you've got little kids, like you don't only manage your emotions, you're also managing like these tiny humans' emotions, which can be so hard. And our youngest son has emotions. I mean, he just feels, and he feels big, and he feels hard.
Aww.
And he is just like the first 2 years of his life, he just cried every single day, like all day, every day.
What month was he born?
Oh my gosh. He was born in July. So yeah, but I just remember like running into like a mom in Target once, and he was just crying. I like was holding him, bouncing him between the cart and whatever. And she just looked at me and she's like, I have one like that too, but she's my easiest teenager. And I'm like, okay, that's my hope, is that my hardest like baby toddler is like my easiest, but he's actually getting to a really fun age, and he's really come out of that. I mean, he's still kind of, he still has emotions, but I will say that like me taking care of myself makes me a better mom. I get up and I take time to like give myself mental, energy. Like I take time. I don't really like meditate, but I like to journal. I like to do gratitude practices. I like to do breathing practices. And even if it's just 10 minutes before my kids wake up, having just that moment to just like, it just gets me going, it just like really like amplifies my life. And then of course, like eating regularly. So many moms just don't eat. I don't have time. I just don't have time to eat. And I'm like, okay, well then you're losing your crap on your family later in the day, and you're mad at everybody, but like you're the one who did this to yourself because you didn't eat all day, or you ate like a bird,
what do you do?
Or whatever.
What do you do when you're super busy and like, you mentioned that you do a lot of photography and sometimes you're really busy. Like, how do you keep up with your food?
Everything else in my life revolves around my food, and I'm like not even kidding. Like I am the mom, and I haven't always been this way. But as I started to realize just how important like my nutrition was for everything else in my life, is like I won't stay up till all hours of the night cleaning my house and doing all these things because I'd rather go to bed, because I think that sleeping is more important than a clean house. But then again, that's my personal preference. And there's other moms that are like, well, I can't go to bed because if I wake up to a messy house, like it ruins my entire day. But I just changed my expectations. I changed my, whatever. And of course, like we try to keep our house clean, but there are some days where I'm just like, F this, I'm going to bed. I don't even care. Like I'm done, because I'm a morning person, but I'm not a night person. 8 p.m. rolls around and it's like, don't ask me to do anything. I'm parking my butt on the couch. I'm eating my like nighttime snack and nobody bug me, Yeah. But yeah, I think it's just like managing those different expectations and realizing that if you're too busy to eat, you probably need to like take a little bit of look at your life, because no one should be neglecting a basic human necessities for busyness. Like, I mean, granted, there's days and there's times where things just get crazy, but if it's happening regularly and you're just too busy to sit down and feed yourself, what other things in your life are taking precedent over your own care?
By the way, your kitchen looks immaculate, and it looks awesome. By the way, like I know why you want to cook.
I love my kitchen,
because that kitchen looks bomb. If y'all are watching on the YouTube, your kitchen, you got to do like a cribs or something.
Seriously. No, we love this house. We like got into this house like right during 2020 when interest rates were like basically nothing. And right before the housing market went, whoosh. So like we're sitting in this house and we're like, we got so freaking lucky. Like when we bought this house, like we really did. I mean, cause I think it was like 2 months after we closed, it went whoosh, like skyrocketed. And we were like, oh dang. So we love this house. I love this kitchen. I love it.
And I did have some other questions about like your workouts. What are you doing for like? I know you do Paragon training. What specific program are you doing? And then, how do you? Yeah, like when do you work out? Like what's that look like? What's your day look like with working out with kids? Like do your kids work out? You said that they kind of go do their own thing, and then you and your husband work out together, or what does all that look like?
It kind of depends. I started with Paragon. It was like right before you guys launched Physique. I think at the time you were still just doing like the Paragon workouts, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, but the day you launched Physique, I was like, this is what I need, like right here, because the Olympic lifting was like, I was having fun with it, but I'm like, this isn't really like my jam. So the day that Physique came out, I've pretty much followed that up until this cycle. I'm doing like Brian's specific program right now, which has just been so fun. It's just, I've really, really been enjoying it, but pretty much like Physique for the last, 3.5 years. This is something else that I wanted to kind of say and speak to is that it's really important that we make sure that we don't like, as women, as people in general, but like women and moms, that we're not necessarily comparing ourselves to like other people and what they're doing because we're on different seasons. So for a long time, like if I didn't get up and work out at 5 or 5:30 in the morning, it just like honestly didn't happen because my kids were young, they were home. And it was just like impossible to like get to the gym, or I didn't necessarily love taking my kids to the gym daycare because my youngest was just like, he just made everybody's life hell. So I just didn't want to like do that to other people. But right now, like we're in a season of life where a couple hours every morning from Monday through Thursday, at least, like I don't have kids because they are in preschool or my older son's in 2nd grade. And so lately I wake up early and do work or like I said, I kind of do my morning routine and then I'll work out when my kids are like school. So from like 8 to 10, I've got that block of time, but it doesn't always happen. It depends on what our day's like. Some days I still will get up and work out like first thing in the morning, like, 5 or 5:30. I just don't love it. I did that for years. And then I started realizing my workouts are so much more effective and efficient if I'm working out a little later, if I've had breakfast, if I've like given my body a chance to wake up. So if I can, I'd rather work out like between like 8 and 10, but it just doesn't always happen. But again, I didn't do that for a long time because I had little babies. And now my kids are a little bit older. So it's like moms that are listening to this or that are just like feeling so frustrated because they're like, I have 4 kids under the age of 6. No one's in school. I'm not taking 4 kids to the gym daycare because it's going to cost me an extra $100 a month or whatever, It can be really frustrating to get like where you're like roll their eyes because they're like, well, I don't have that luxury. And that's true. Like, we all have the same 24 hours, but we don't have the same privileges or circumstances. I'm really fortunate and blessed that I have a nice home gym. Like we've got a really nice setup out there. We're kind of slowly continuing to build. I'm really blessed and fortunate that like my husband and I work from home. So we're not having to juggle these like random like work schedules. I have so many friends that I've talked to. I mean, where we live, it's agriculture, it's manufacturing. It's a lot of, those kinds of things where a lot of people's husbands are gone from 5 a.m. to sometimes like 6 or 7 p.m. So there's like these moms that are writing me on Instagram and they're like, well, when am I supposed to work out? My husband leaves before the sun comes up and then comes home before the sun goes down, or at least during certain parts of the year. And so it can be hard, but that's where we have to pull back and say, okay, maybe you can't do 5 days a week of Paragon, but can you do 30 minutes a day? Or can you do a 15-minute workout and can you take your kids on a walk? Right? Like there's always something we can be doing.
Something's better than nothing.
And then when your season changes, you can dive in more. But like going from that 0 to 100 or always trying to do that is when we typically just like crash and burn. And so depending on what season you're in, just do what you can, set those minimums. And then like I said, right now we're in a season of life that is just like really opened up a lot of doors for me to have more flexibility, but it hasn't always been like that.
I love all of that so much. That was so good because too, I think again, it's like you guys designed your dream life. So like we had just interviewed our good friend Laura Hall, and this was something she talked about where it was like, the way that things look now isn't always what they looked like in the past, but she got to figure out over time, ooh, I really love XYZ. and you know what? I really want to stop doing XYZ. And so I think it's really cool that, you've kind of lived that same experience of like, okay, well, we didn't always have a home gym. We started building that and we started investing in that. And that's always something we're trying to kind of promote people to is like, well, hey, even if you can't make it to the gym, could you invest in a couple pairs of dumbbells for those busy ass days that you're just like, I'm not getting to the gym. I have a sick kid, life happened, whatever it is, like kind of having, how do you make the best choice, also the easiest choice. And so for you guys, you have a home gym. You don't have to spend time driving, but mutually it's like you put in your time and you had the 5 a.m., the 4 a.m. wake ups and stuff like that. So I think that's all so good. I would love to ask a question because we've featured a lot of your posts over the years with Paragon and your journey with postpartum because you were one of the moms that was really soaking up education and information that we were trying to put out of just, hey guys, it's like, I know it's hard, but postpartum, what if you spent the time just letting your body recover? And what if you spent time not immediately going to a calorie deficit and, the idea of like air quoting, trying to get your body back. What if you just gave your body food and time to recover and that space to just be? So I'd love for you to kind of talk about maybe more so like your second kiddo, because we know the first kiddo is just a little bit different situation, but like how much food were you eating? When did you actually, how long was it postpartum before you did start dieting and trying to change your body composition? What did your postpartum journey look like with that second kiddo?
Yeah, for sure. So before I got pregnant with him, remember, I'd lost a bunch of weight. I'd lost 35 pounds in 5 months. And I'm not a tall person. I even looking at pictures or knowing my stats, I'm I've been overweight, but maybe just barely considered overweight. Right. And so for me to think about losing 35 pounds, now I'm oh my gosh, I had no muscle though. I was just a rail, and so I'd come from that whole thing. So I knew as when I was blessed to get pregnant, I was blessed to get my cycle back and be able to experience that again, that I was my body can really only handle so much stress. I have half a thyroid. I've got some other, things some other women might be able to push themselves to a bigger, a more threshold, but I just know my body is way more sensitive. And this is something that I have to tune in and listen because for years I just didn't. I didn't listen to my body. I said, screw you. You don't know what you're talking about. I know better. I'm going to do what I want. And then your body's no, you're not. And now you're going to, anyways. So I had my second baby. And like I said, I'd been following you for a while and I was just okay, I'm not going to diet. I'm not going to diet right now. I'm going to just focus in on lifting and getting into a routine with this new baby. I had 2 kids. Going from two kids from 1 kid is a very big transition that I was also not prepared for. But everybody says that 1 to 2 is the hardest because once you keep adding after that, I guess it's just a circus anyways. But yeah, that 1 to 2, and I have almost a 5-year age gap. So we were very much out of the baby phase. So I was just starting over. And then the pandemic hit, right? So it was end of 2019 is when I joined Paragon, started that. And then the pandemic hit and we just were we had no idea what to expect for our business, for our life. And I was for the first time in my life, I was okay, so I can create healthy habits. I can do these things, but I'm going to just step way back and realize that my body doesn't need to change right now. There are so many other things going on in the world, in our business, and we don't even know what's about to happen. And so for all of 2020, I followed Paragon. And you guys, again, you were just talking about this, investing a couple sets of dumbbells. If Paragon didn't do anything other than teach us that you can still make progress at home with a couple sets of dumbbells and some bands, you guys launched that and it was just it took off and it was huge. And it did. It just showed you that you don't have to have all this fancy stuff. You can make progress in a very minimal way. And so I did all of 2020. I, just kind of hung out, but I started a cut. I started my first deficit in January of 2021. So it was 15 months is when I just sat. I actually didn't track all of 2020. It was just one more thing that I just felt my mental health couldn't take at the time with everything else that was crashing and burning in the world. But I took pictures side by sides, from October of 2019 to January of 21. And I weighed the exact same, but my body composition wasn't the same. You could tell, I had definitely lost some fat, gained some muscle. Like, I had definitely seen those changes happen.
We just talked about this on the Q&A. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then from there, I've kind of bounced between maintenance and some deficits and had, some things I've had some mental health struggles that I had to pull back for a little while. Like, I need to focus on my mental health rather than my physical health. I've seen myself gain some weight back and different things, but right now I just feel like I put in work, I put in the reps, I put in the hours. And right now I'm in a place where I just feel really good and really excited about what's to come. I'm really happy with like where my body's at, where my strength's at, where my mental health is at. I'm like, let's go.
I love that. Seriously. I love that. Well, we're kind of coming up on our time. Alex, do you have any like burning questions you want to ask?
No, I think I've got all of my questions asked, but I definitely enjoyed, because it's hard, like I don't have kids, Lori doesn't have kids. And, I coach a lot of people with kids and with, parents and stuff like that. And, I can do my best to try to understand, but it is very hard to understand what that life is like. So like, I just appreciate you coming on and sharing, all the things. And I'm sure the listeners with kids, busy parents and stuff like that will definitely appreciate hearing how you approach your health and your fitness. You said some really awesome things about just like prioritizing, your own self-care and health. I think that's so important. Like, I think a lot of parents, like, they just totally put everybody in front of them and they don't think about themselves. And you really cannot be a great parent if you're not taking care of yourself in some capacity. It doesn't have to be like, we're not going to expect you to be some like fitness person who lives, breathes, eats all this stuff like all day long, but like you got to do something.
Yeah. Well, and I tell that to people all the time. I'm like, we love following all of these fitness professionals, but I'm like, they're fitness professionals. Like they literally do this for a living. And a lot of them like don't have kids or maybe not are in the same situation. So I'm like, go to that. And so I tell people all the time, I'm like, cherry pick from a bunch of different people and then morph it into like what you want in your life. Because again, like as soon as you get a routine down with your kids, they're going to get sick. Or they're going to start teething, or they're going to learn to walk, or they're going to learn, it is just a constant never ending change to where you're like, okay, I got this routine down for 2 weeks. And then all of a sudden they're like up for, 3 weeks for no reason at all. And so you just have to, again, it's like about like setting those minimums and just like, what is the bare minimum I can do every single day to still push me towards my goals? And then just know that, I'm reading like a really great book right now that's all about like the obstacles are the way and that everything that happens to us in our life is actually for our benefit. And so I've just been like really amped up in all of this, like, no, our trials like make us stronger, but it's true. Like anything that you get thrown at you that you can learn to adapt is just going to make you that much better as you move forward. Mm-hmm. And again, everybody's life is different. Everybody's circumstances are different. I work from home. I have 2 kids. Maybe you work outside the home and you have 5 kids. Take a little bit what I say, but then also realize it's not going to apply it 100%,
What's that? Obstacles are the way?
I think so. I don't know where it is. It's called, I think it's The Obstacle is the Way. I think is what it's called. Anyways, I'm like halfway through it.
He'll put it in
you
the
guys,
show notes.
It is seriously
he's
such a good book. I've just been like, it's been motivating to me. Yeah.
Carli, what are your other favorite like pregnancy and or postpartum accounts? Because I think the big ones that come to mind would be like Brianna Battles. There's also Girls Gone Strong posts a lot of postpartum stuff. Obviously, we do a lot of work with the Mint Project, but do you have any particular either moms you love following or just like kind of accounts like that if people are in that place where they're just like, where do I get started? Where can I learn how to take care of my body during pregnancy or during postpartum? Like, where are your go-to resources or who are those go-to accounts?
Yeah. That is interesting because I actually, as I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, I don't know if I follow a lot. I have to be really conscious of like the parenting accounts that I follow and things as far as like parenting goes, because that can get real overwhelming and that can make you feel like you're the worst parent in the world real quick. And so again, it's kind of one of those things where it's like, it's not like I don't want to learn and grow, but at the same time, I'm like, everybody's circumstance is different. And I struggle with a lot of parenting accounts because I'm like, well, you make me feel like I'm failing. So, so I'm just like, but yeah, what'd you say? Gone Strong, something Girl Gone Strong. Is that what you called it?
Girls Gone Strong.
Girls Strong, Strong. That and the Men Project. I do follow both of those. But really, a lot of my education resources I found were not necessarily postpartum. They were just general, health and fitness, like, you and Paragon. And I mean, there's so many that I can't even think of off the top of my head. But, and again, just like, but I also feel like I got really good at that. Like, okay, LCK's telling me this, but like, I have to also remember that, she doesn't have kids. So I'm going to take what she says, but I'm going to like shift it and apply it to my life in the best way that I can. Or, and like Kelly Wright's been like, she posts all the time about like shift work and like her meal prepping and stuff like that. It's like, I don't have any idea about that. Like I cook at home pretty much all day, every day. But it's like things like that are so great for moms or other people who might be like, okay, well, I go work at a hospital for, 12 to 14 hour shifts. I don't have the luxury of, eating at home. And so again, it's just about like, I think following a vast variety of people so that you can kind of just see a little bit how everybody does and then piece it all together for yourself.
Take what works.
Exactly.
Yeah, take what you would work
Try
and
it
then
out.
leave the rest.
See
Try
how it feels.
Yeah.
If it doesn't feel good, toss it aside.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Alex, who all of our friend group, because I'm trying to like think of some people that would be great to follow. And so I'm thinking like Kate Lyman, which is KL Nutrition, Joelle Samantha, Alessandra Skutnik.
Annie Miller just had a baby. I like, I follow Annie.
Yeah.
She's awesome. Ocean Trail.
Gen Fit, Ocean.
Yeah.
It's so funny because it's like I either know like half of people's names or half of their Instagram accounts. So we will definitely.
Me. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know people's names.
We can link these all in the show notes.
Yeah.
Like nobody knows who they're acting. Like, what's your name? Actually, I just call you by your Instagram handle.
And the same thing goes with this. Like, if you're like, a mom that's maybe like in her 40s or 50s, like, are you following women that are also in their 40s and 50s? Like the gym nurse and Juan Wellness, I think is her account. Or are you following 20-something singles that like aren't applicable to your life at all? You know what I mean? It's like, sure, maybe you could like follow their workouts and stuff, but don't get frustrated over the 25-year-old who like is just getting started in life. When you're like in your 40s and 50s, you're probably getting close to menopause. You're probably like dealing with teenagers or like all these other, you know what I mean? It's just like, you got to kind of realize that who you follow does matter and make sure that you're following applicable people.
Yeah,
totally. Well, Carli, where can everyone follow you? Because you did mention you get into nutrition coaching. So if you want to share where people can find you, follow along for your journey, then maybe just briefly kind of share like, hey, I do nutrition coaching. These are the types of people I love working with. Or like, if you're this person, come hang with me.
Yeah, for sure. So my handle is at Coach Carli Jo, CarliJo. And yeah, come hang out with me on Instagram. I really just love people who, one, are ready to put in the work. You know what I mean? Like, let's just be ready. I think we could all say that. But I actually really, really like people who maybe don't feel like they have all the answers. Every once in a while you'll get somebody that's like, well, I'm hiring a coach, but I already know what I need to do. And it's like, no, you don't. You don't know. You don't know. And so people that just come and they're just like, I'm done. I'm fed up. I'm done. I have no opinions. Just tell me what to do. And we can just start at the ground and we can start very, very simple. Like, right now I just started with a girl and I'm like, we're not tracking macros. We're not going to do any of that right now. We're going to work on your sleep. We're going to work on, just some of these other things. And then we'll get into that. You know what I mean? Because for so many people, it's like, they don't need another diet. They don't need another set of macro numbers. They need to work on solid, basic foundational habits and a relationship with themselves and their body and getting out of that all or nothing mentality, right? Because when we are only making choices for our health, hoping for that weight loss outcome, we'll crash and burn every time. You have to do these things because no matter the outcome, I'm going to get up and I'm going to exercise regardless if I lose weight. I'm going to eat fruits and vegetables regardless if I lose weight. You just have to do those things. And so I love working with people that are just ready to just ditch that all or nothing and not necessarily be looking for faster, like those results right away, because they might not come. You might not be in a place to have those results. It might be a year-long work before we can get to a point where you're ready to diet and start actually like making those results you want. But I love that. I love those journeys.
Man, this episode was fire, Carli.
Let's do it.
Thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah.
This was so, so good.
Well, I just love you guys.
Yeah, thank you.
So awesome. Thanks for having me. This is fun.